Okay, we're gonna get started right on time here and kick off just because we have a pretty full day today. We're gonna do some quick campus and community spotlights, shout outs, and then we do have PJ here from the DIS. Right after that, we're gonna do some Title IX training and then we'll conclude right around 6. So for campus and community spotlights, we still have the powwow going on this week. The best spot is if you head to their Facebook. That's typically where you can get hooked in with any updates, anything that's being posted throughout the week. Tristan also shared it in the group me too, so if you also click that link, it takes you right there as well. We do have on Friday, the Office of Health Advancement is sharing a presentation that's essentially around ditching the diet. So it's kind of informing students of general intuitive eating habits, what diets do to you, culturally different diets across the world. So kind of a cool effort, and that's going to be over the noon hour on Friday. We do also have PJ's here. Do you want to talk about your?
Well, I can say just very quickly on Friday, 3:30 to 5, we're having a multicultural climb night. So if you identify or if you have any friends who identify as multicultural, biracial, international, we encourage you to come to the multicultural climb night. You do have to RSVP. All that information is on Cascade.
You get free shoes and stuff like that.
Yep.
So kind of cool. We also have Bowling Mania. They can be 6 teams of 3. It's hosted through OSE. It's going to be down in the Sub Rec Center, so right down below us. And that's going to be on Friday at 5 p.m. And then final reminder that you guys are early class registrations. Your time rolls at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning.
Oh, wow.
You're really easy, eager. You can get in there and register early. Yes.
The dish that I did was easy.
No.
Really? I was like, sign up for it. Decided they emailed today saying that for whatever reason.
Oh, well, unfortunately, that event won't be taking place then. But I pulled it from the MSU Today calendar, so I'm sorry. I'm sorry to promote that and then take that away from you.
I will add that that is a part of a series that OHA is doing, and next Wednesday, some students from my office, the DISC, are hosting an Accessibility 101 course. So it's a training around ability status, language for ability status, different things like that. So check that out. That is not canceled. So check it out.
Not canceled. What else is happening on campus? What else would we like to highlight? Campus community highlight. Warren?
I mean, I heard about some swing dancing that's in the community that's happening here soon at the fairgrounds.
Swing dancing at the fairgrounds.
Yeah, I'm on the fence. It's Friday at like 7-ish. Actually, no.
Friday at 7-ish. Good stuff. Anything else? Does anyone have any shout outs?
Oh, I know.
Okay, Chris?
Tristan, Alex, the other superstars inviting everyone out to the Singo.
Oh, snaps for them for going to Singo. Alex and Tristan, do you have shout outs? So now we actually have folks that have done Singo, as we've been talking about it for the last semester. Very awesome.
Okay, but it actually slaps. It's really cool.
Taylor?
6. They started at 7 and then had a class at 7, so I shut up at 6 and they were like, what? And I was like, oh, for 6. So, yeah.
I'm still confused.
Disappointment. Taylor?
Yeah. Shout out to Kaya for practicing. Shout out to Taylor.
Shout outs for practicing presentations and doing in-service points. Yes. Yes.
Shout out to Owen. I saw him at Walmart today.
Shout out Owen for going to Walmart. Awesome. Tristan?
Shout out to Oregon for hanging out with me the other day.
Shout out.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Owen? Shout out Ian Haircuts. Yes. So many shout outs today. Okay, payroll reminder for those of you that I individually emailed, they have modified the date that paperwork is due. And so this big yellow square is the update. It's actually due April 12th. So if you guys, and Lindsay should be handing out that paperwork. So you basically take that completed form, you fill out the one that was emailed to you, and then you bring either an unexpired passport or your driver's license and social security card. You take all of that documentation and you bring it into Jen Kaiser in our office. JK's office is if you go upstairs, You go past the gatekeepers, there's like some desks. You gotta get past the gatekeepers, and then Jen Kaiser's office is at the end on the right-hand side. So if you ask for Jen Kaiser, she's gonna be the one who turn in all of that paperwork too. And it takes very little time once you're in there. And then with that, just some reminders. Next class, we have returner group number 4 due. If you haven't connected with your returner group, please connect with them. Figure out a time, connect with someone. We also have a quiz next class that's going to be covering everything between the midterm and this quiz. And we'll post some more information on D2L as well. And then also next class, we're going to be doing the nitty-gritty parent presentation for you guys. That's going to be your next upcoming, one of your last assignments of the semester, and it's going to be due April 8th. So that kind of gives you some outlook for the next few weeks. Any questions before we turn it over to PJ? Yeah, Liz.
Are there any more notes?
Lindsay, do we have any more note-taking sheets?
Yeah, how many do you need? We only have, does the Title IX need a?
It should not. I mean, generally, yes, you should keep notes, but it probably doesn't have as extensive of notes, just more knowledge for you guys to keep in mind.
Yeah, who needs them? Raise your hand. And PJ, I also have a microphone here. Like, to use it. I think that would be.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, perfect. Okay, while Lindsay's passing those out, we do have PJ here. I'll let her introduce herself a little bit, but this is going to be our presentation on diversity and inclusion. And then right around 5:15-ish, we'll turn it over to Tammy and she'll do our Title IX training. So please be attentive, take notes, ask questions. Turn it over to you.
Thank you, Shannon. Hello, everybody. Oh, and Herbie. Let's try this again. Hello, everyone. All right, that's a little bit better. As Shannon said, my name is PJ Diamond, and I am the program manager in the DISC, or the Diversity and Inclusion Student Commons. And we're just going to jump right into it. We only have about 35 minutes or so, and I'm hoping to have you guys interact a little bit with me, so I'm jumping right in. So before we can completely jump in, I think that it's super appropriate and fitting that we are here at Montana State University and here in Bozeman. I'd like to start the general, or the majority of my presentations with a land acknowledgement. So if you all could just take a moment and maybe put your pencils down, you can take a sip of water, you can maybe close your eyes, but if you could just take a moment and kind of ground yourselves, I'm gonna read these words and I'd like you to let them sit and marinate a little bit. I would like us to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territories of many Indigenous peoples and tribes on which we are learning, working, and organizing today. Please take this moment to connect with the land you are currently on and recognize that many of us are simply occupiers of this space and that Indigenous people are the past, present, and future caretakers of this land. As we work towards justice and liberty, we must remember the ever-present systematic inequity and oppression of the First Nations people and commit indefinitely to the respect of and reconciliation of this long-standing history of injustice. How many of you have heard or seen a land acknowledgement before? Okay, most of us. Has anybody ever heard of this land or this valley that we're in called the Valley of the Flowers? Oh, awesome. Awesome. Normally I'm in a room where no one raises their hand, so this is really awesome to see that you all have had this experience before. Any impressions or anything that you all would like to share in regards to this land acknowledgement or any experience with a land acknowledgement that you have? Yeah, sure.
I like to say that the Indigenous people are the past, present, and
Absolutely. And I think too, it's recognizing the past, present, and future, right? I think so many times we often think of indigenous peoples or the native peoples as kind of this ancient thing, but they are very much not. They are very much alive and present. Native communities are alive and present here in Bozeman and here in this nation. So it's important to recognize that. Any other impressions or anything that you would like to share? All right, cool. I'll get you talking. I'm not that worried about it. I'll get you talking. Okay, so as we're talking about diversity and inclusion, first I want to give you all some stats. You're going to be talking, or you do talk to current students who have recently enrolled here at the university. You maybe are talking to prospective students and prospective family members as well. So it's important to have some of this information kind of in the back of your head or in your notebook. So often when we're talking about, or maybe even thinking about diversity in any sense, we're often thinking about skin color, point blank, or at least that surface level diversity. Now, we're going to talk a little bit later that it goes much deeper than that, but kind of off the bat, to give you all an idea of what these statistics look like here at Montana State, here you are. Any first impressions? Yeah.
I think it's cool that like it's not like 100% for people trying to identify as like multiple.
Yeah, so you picked that up. That's something that I normally explain. Thank you for picking that up. So yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
Chris.
Chris. So as Chris pointed out, this is actually duplicated data. So what that means is that any student who identifies with multiple racial categories was able to indicate that on this particular campus climate survey. So for example, I myself identify as biracial, I am Black and white, and so any student that identifies like I do, they would be able to check off as many ethnicities or races that they identify with, and that's what we have here on this slide. Any other impressions? I saw a few hands, so I didn't know if there's anything different that people would like to add. Yeah.
The diversity is kind of underwhelming.
The diversity is kind of underwhelming. Yeah, so I think it's important to recognize that, yes, we are a PWI or predominantly white institution. Now, I will mention, with this duplicated data and the fact that many students were able to indicate their multiple ethnicities, their multiple races, 20% of students did indicate a racial category other than white. So we have to recognize kind of the pluralistic aspect there, that many students may be white presenting, or maybe many students do have some white in their skin, but they are also identifying in other racial categories. So that is here at Montana State to kind of recognize that it's not just skin color, there's a little bit more to it. All right, so moving forward, giving you all some information in terms of the DISC, or the office that I am here representing. How many of you are familiar with the DISC? Okay, most of you, awesome. So I'm sure you all can read here, but just to reiterate, our mission is to increase understanding, promote inclusion, and inspire critical thinking around diversity topics, as well as provide support to those who identify with a wide range of diverse identity groups. Beyond anything, I hope that you can take from this presentation and basically how I represent the DISC as the DISC is an educative place. It's a place to come and ask questions and to learn about difference. It's also a place that you can make mistakes. We are all not perfect, and especially when we're talking about things that correlate with identity and getting to know other people, we're gonna make mistakes. We're gonna ask questions that maybe don't sound perfect coming out, and that's okay. The DISC is a place that we are here to explore those types of things. So some of the programs that we have, or I would say our staple programs within the DISC, we have our Diversity and Inclusion Student Ambassadors, or DIAs, as we like to call them. They are student volunteers in my office and kind of the front-facing side of the DISC. My student staff very much are the front-facing side as well, but these students help with outreach, whether it's for our office specifically, or it's for other student organizations. We've helped to support several cultural groups and identity groups on this campus via just people showing up to their meetings and or events and or developing different graphics. But really, those students are there for outreach as well as to make sure that our office can stay open. How many of you know where the disc is? Where is it? Third floor. Okay, very good. Yep, so my office is right across the way here from the procrastinator, and then the student space is up on the third floor. Just want to make sure that's clear because some people don't know that. Next, I'll talk about Safe Zone. Has anybody here gone through Safe Zone? Has anybody trained in Safe Zone? A number of us? Few of us? Okay. So Safe Zone is an educational opportunity that we offer through the DISC as well as in partnership with CPS. And this is an educational opportunity that teaches and increases awareness around LGBTQ plus identities and concerns. So there are 3 modules as a part of Safe Zone. Number 1, or the first module teaches it increases that awareness or raises awareness around LGBTQ plus identities and concerns. The second module is really focused on building allyship, so how we can be allies to those in the LGBTQ plus community. And then lastly is more so a personal and kind of reflective exercise or training exercise in which we are examining our own personal heterosexism and trans negativity. So I definitely encourage you all to check that out. There are public sessions that we offer every semester that anybody as a part of the MSU community can sign up to. And then we also do private training sessions as well. So for example, if your organization wanted to do a Safe Zone training, or if this particular class wanted to do a Safe Zone training, that would be something that we could coordinate. Yeah.
So what? I know both of those are very separate.
So heterosexism is the notion that being heterosexual in terms of a man and a woman, that this is the way that we should be, that as humans, that's the way it is. This is the only way, man and woman. Does that make sense? Yeah. So with that kind of using that notion to apply to all relationships in this world is heterosexism. That man and woman are together and that's how it should be. Do you understand?
Like, yeah, I do, but how is that different?
How is that different from homophobia? Well, first off, we shy away from the word, or I would say maybe not shy away, but we have progressed from using the word of homophobia and what is it? Not homophobia. Let me get back to you on the word, or maybe it'll come as I'm talking, but we kind of move from this word of homophobia because having a phobia is having an irrational fear. And in using that of homosexuals as that's kind of based from, it's not an irrational fear of people of the same sex or similar sex being together. So I can't think of the word. If anybody knows the word that we use, please say it, but it's not homophobia. Owen? Okay.
So like, as you were talking about heterosexism, like, how is that, like, how do you see that? Because I guess my question is like, a lot of people who like, I guess, are, so is someone who like is supporting that, being heterosexist in a way of like, oh, like, if you talk to that girl, does that mean that like, that you being heterosexist, or it's like you see that?
Yeah, and I appreciate these questions so much, and honestly, you all should join a Safe Zone training, is basically what I have to say. Come and see me after this presentation, or maybe after class, or I can send an email to you all, Shannon, if you can get me connected with these students, and I can give you a little bit more information. We're getting kind of into the nitty-gritty of the meanings of these particular words and how they can be interpreted and all of that, which I very much appreciate. However, I need to talk about a lot more. And so for the sake of time, please let's connect afterwards and I can give you a little bit more maybe more well thought out information around these times, okay? Thank you, I appreciate your understanding. Okay, moving forward, we also have our all-inclusive mentoring program, which is a program that used to be specifically for LGBTQ plus students. This year, one of our student coordinators was able to expand that program, and so it's based on identity. So any student that is looking for a mentor on this campus that has a similar identity as them, they would be more than encouraged to apply to this program, and we would work to match them with experienced mentors on this campus. It's important to mention that, yes, of course, we match students based on race and ethnicity, based on sexual orientation or gender identity, but there are other identities that we are very much matching on. I think often, again, as we're thinking about diversity and inclusion, you think of skin color, what do people look like? And then we also think of how people are expressing themselves or who they are attracted to. Diversity is much broader than that, folks. So we also are matching students based on ability status. We're also matching students based on the fact that they may be a transfer student or a non-traditional student. We've even matched a student based on their religious background. So please keep in mind that diversity is much more than just what we can see. It involves much more than that. Lastly, we have sustained dialogue. This has been a program that has been on campus and then faded away, and then come back to campus and kind of faded away. And so we're very much in the building stages again right now. Tomorrow, actually, I'll be hiring on 3 new students that will take leadership of this organization. And so they will be working with the about 30 moderators that we train this semester, and then hopefully come fall semester, through the various academic departments here on campus, in partnership with my office, the DISC, we will be hosting various dialogue groups on campus. So that'll be something to keep your ear to the ground and listen for if you're interested. I'm going to kind of quickly go through this. This is just a sampling of some of the programs and events that the DISC has hosted, as well as in partnership with other organizations and clubs on campus. And that kind of takes me to who we're partnering with. So if you look at the Division of Student Success, the DISC, Women's Center, Boys Center, we are probably the smallest offices in the division. And so with that being said, as a part of the DISC, we are trying to collaborate and partner with as many people as possible. So you can see some of the office departments on this campus that we have partnered with, as well as some of the student organizations. All right. Are there any questions about the DISC and our programs or any of the events that we have hosted? Yeah.
How often are like all the states those trainings offered?
Great question. So the public sessions, there are normally at least 2 a semester. So there'll be, for example, like September, there will be a module 1, October, no. I was just looking at this calendar. Yeah, so like September, October, there's 2 module 1s, and then we kind of stagger, but for every module, there's 2 public offerings a semester. Yeah.
How do you guys advertise for the training?
How do we advertise? So for Safe Zone specifically, we do have that on the MSU Today calendar, right? That's what it's called. We also have them on Cats Connect as well. And I would say loosely, we do market Safe Zone on our Instagram. But with it being connected with CPS, that it kind of depends on the year and who's helping with some of that marketing. Yeah.
So you talked about the safe zone trainings being like the public sessions. What is the not public section? And what would those look like compared to the ones that maybe us as students might expose to?
Right. Well, so the public sessions, you all are more than able and capable to sign up for those sessions. And when I say public, that just means any student, staff, or faculty here at MSU would be able to register and attend that particular event. In terms of the private sessions, that's really, we deal with that on a case-by-case basis. So for example, say you are the president of the sandwich making club. And you all have been talking about sexual orientation and gender identity, and you want to have more education around that. And so you contact the DISC. On our website, we do have a specific tab that says request the workshop. And so you would fill that online sheet out, kind of giving us all the information that we would need to know to set up that space. And then whenever we pick that day, the moderator or the facilitators will show up, and then your sandwich making club would come into that room or come into that virtual space, and we would offer the training to just that group. Anyone else? All right. Okay, yeah, no problem.
What's the outreach work that you do, like, to connect to like other organizations on campus?
What kind of outreach? Yeah, so I mean, it's really depending, I would say the DISC is here to support various student organizations. So really it's up to the student organizations in terms of what support they need. So for example, I would say, has anybody heard of the new Asia Club on campus? Some of us, yeah, okay, awesome. Well, I actually had a part in establishing that club in the sense that a student came to me expressing that they realized that there was no real community for some of the Asian students or Asian identifying students on this campus, and they wanted to create a space for those students. And so we worked together to figure out what are all the things that you need to start a club? How many people do you need? What type of funding do you need? All of those kind of intricacies that go into that. And then, yeah, now there's a club on campus. So I guess that's more in terms of support. In terms of outreach, I would say a lot of the educational opportunities that we offer. So the things that you're seeing with SAFSO, that would be one. The Accessibility 101 training that we are offering for the next 2 weeks, March 31st, as well as April 7th. Yes, that is through a workshop series with OHA. However, students in my office developed that training. I would say also right around Valentine's Day this semester, our DAs were out in front of Montana Hall giving out hot chocolate and hot chocolate, cookies, and disc grab bags with various information, and there's some candy in there, some USBs, things like that. So really, we're doing a little bit of everything. I will also let you all know that this is my first year here at MSU and here in Bozeman. And so I would say I'm still experimenting a lot with the outreach that we're doing, because I may have some ideas of what will get out to you all as students, but you all have a better idea of what you need and what you want. And so I'm very much taking cues from the students that I work with in terms of what's going to be most effective for you all. All right, let's move forward. And now it's time for me to ask you all some questions. So, off that, when you're hearing about diversity, and you've heard me talk for at least 15 minutes now, so when you hear diversity, what do you think about? What words or phrases or ideas come to mind? Yeah.
Different cultures.
Different cultures, okay.
Anything different from myself that I did.
Okay, yeah, sure. So again, pointing out that difference. That's it?
I think look at how we walk in the world, how others walk in the world for experience.
Yeah. Absolutely. Experience is huge in this, for sure. Yeah.
I mean, for me, I've always thought of like, definition. Because I think that who they are and how they treat.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that perspective. And I think in some regard, you're right of identifying the differences between people, but that's part of what makes us human, right? Just because I'm a woman and Shannon's a woman, are we the same? Absolutely not. And so there's beauty in her difference as well as beauty in my difference. Anybody else in terms of diversity? What do you think about?
opinion,
I'm sorry,
opinion, the like idea of like political like diversity.
I didn't hear
Like
the,
political diversity for like MSU has like a lot of different political opinions and beliefs.
thank you, yeah. Yes, and pointing out kind of specifically, like a category, political diversity, absolutely, yeah, Tristan.
I would say that, it also acknowledges like intersectionality, not just like binary identities, but how each and every identity will interacts and creates a new identity.
Well, right, and recognizing that diversity isn't just one thing, or as humans, we can't identify as just one thing, like, I am a woman. Like, there's a lot more there, folks. So, like, absolutely, picking out those different parts of identity and thinking about how they're working together to maybe elevate that privilege or compound to make us less privileged. Yeah,
It can also like be defined as like a wide variety. And like when you think of like, I don't know, like TikTok or like the cable, like a lot of like a very diverse options and very diverse.
yes, absolutely, absolutely. I think you guys are definitely hitting it right on the nose, and we're absolutely talking about difference. So I want to kind of point these out in terms of, as we're talking about diversity, we're talking many times, as we're talking about other humans, again, we're talking about identity. And there are various parts that make us humans that contribute to that diversity. So if we read here, you can kind of see some of these social categories and how we categorize people, how we separate people. And or at least how I like to think about it is like, if we have all these social categories here, every single person in this room is able to mark off a box for each of these categories. Now, are they the same box? Absolutely not. But we all have boxes to kind of check off or to fill in. And so again, in thinking about diversity, so often I hear on this campus, because we are a predominantly white campus, and there are a lot of white people on this campus, that we're not diverse. And I really would like for us to start to shift some of that thinking around diversity and recognize that, okay, you can be a white kid, but you also have all of these other parts of your identity that contribute to the diversity that you have. Does that make sense? All right. So in terms of kind of specific examples here on this campus, to give you an idea of the diversity that does exist, other than just the statistics that I showed. So first, as we started out this presentation, we started with a land acknowledgement. So again, we are acknowledging the Native peoples that have been taking care of this land, that are taking care of this land, and will take care of this land. And so with this being a land grant institution, it's very much intertwined with the mission of this university to serve the American Indian students that come to this campus. And we do that in a variety of ways. You can see some of the mentorship programs here, which I would take note of some of them. There's also an academic department here at the university, which I'm sure many of you know, as well as the Student Success Center that is affiliated with that academic department. And so these are just services and resources for American Indian students to be successful on this campus. Next, moving on to sexual orientation demographics. So from that same campus climate survey that I was talking about a little bit before, that same climate survey, 12% of students indicated that they were a part of the LGBTQ plus community, which really makes the LGBTQ plus community the largest underrepresented population on this campus. And so again, it's important that we support those students so that they can be successful here on this campus. I'd like to point out, because it's coming up, graduation season is just upon us. And so through our office, we do host a lavender celebration, which is specifically for LGBTQ plus students to acknowledge and recognize the accomplishments that they have made over their time here at MSU. And then kind of just a little addition, we also have a kente cloth ceremony as well as a Latinx ceremony. So again, recognizing the accomplishments that these respective students have had as they are very much facing other barriers or other concerns that maybe not all of us are. Lastly, MSU students with disabilities. Again, I'm trying to make it clear to you all that we have to go beyond just the surface level. And so thinking about students with disabilities, this is another pretty big population on our campus. I believe it's about 7% of students here on MSU's campus do identify with a particular disability. Now, do you notice anything interesting about the numbers that are posted here? Or the types of disabilities that are here? Yeah.
I don't know if they count, I really don't know.
Honey, they absolutely count. They absolutely count. If we think about maybe people who suffer from things like depression or anxiety, there are cases in which students, they do find it really hard to go to class and sit in a setting like this. And they can't take tests or different things like that. And so in some cases, those students do need particular accommodations. What I wanted to point out is that if you look at the top three here, ADHD, mental health, learning disability, can you see any of those? Can you look at a person and say, oh, yep, that person's got ADHD, just by looking at it? Absolutely not. And so I think it's really important to mention of thinking about diversity and knowing that the majority of disabilities that our students are identifying with are invisible disabilities. And so again, just being empathetic to those in front of you because we really don't know the struggles that people are going through. Okay, so really lastly, Shannon and I had a conversation before this presentation, and I just, and you all being orientation leaders and talking to prospective students, talking to newly enrolled students, talking to parents as well. I think maybe sometimes when we think about diversity and inclusion, it maybe is a little nerve-wracking, right? Like we're not quite sure what we should say or how we should say it, or maybe we don't necessarily view ourselves as diverse humans, and so it just gets a little sticky. And so I wanted to provide you all with some tips in kind of keeping this in mind as people may be asking more about the efforts that are happening on campus, or even some of the things that you all are exposed to and or involved with here on this campus. So number one, start with yourself. As I've been kind of harping on here, identity is very diverse. There are many social categories in which we are kind of categorizing others, but also categorizing ourselves. So talk about yourself. What have you been involved with here on campus? What do you find fun or engaging on this campus? What kind of classes have you taken on this campus that have exposed you to ideas that maybe you weren't familiar with at first? Also, thinking about some of the things in our Bozeman community, I would think about, like things like, what is it, Shakespeare in the Park or Shakespeare in Bozeman or something like that. I'm just getting kind of acquainted with that. Or even the different restaurants that are here on campus. How many of you know about Seven Sushi? I love that place. And I would say, I lived in Japan for 3.5 years. I'll tell you, they've got some damn good sushi. So check them out. But there are many places in this community that do foster ideas and representations of diversity. So check them out and talk about them. Just because Shannon doesn't offer it on a slide doesn't mean you can't talk about it. When people are asking about diversity on campus or things that you're involved with, think outside the box a little bit. Number two, talk about the DISC. You just sat through a presentation with me. You've learned about some of the programs. I'm going to connect with some of you all to get some additional information out there. So know that we are a resource here on this campus. And as it pertains to diversity and inclusion, we're open to talking about those topics. Lastly, do not be afraid to say, I don't know. I think many times being in the capacity that you all are in, and I myself was a tour guide back a number of years ago at my university, at my alma mater, and many times we feel this pressure that you got to answer all the questions. Mom and dad are standing right in front of you, and they're shooting these questions at you, and you want to get them as much information as possible so that you can ensure them and their student that they have made the right decision to come to MSU. That's all well and great, but you're not gonna know it all. I mean, heck, I'm the program manager. I don't even know it all. You just heard me answer the question about sexual orientation and heterosexism and all of that. So I'm not claiming to know it all either. However, we are a place in which I'll take the time and do some research. I'll take the time and send you some additional resources in an email. I'll take the time to sit down and talk to you. And so just know that you can refer people to us, but you all as students on this campus, the DISC is here to serve you too. So if you have questions or concerns, or if you want to just bounce an idea off of me or anything like that, please know that the DISC is a place to do so. All right. That is all I have, and I'm going to open it up to the questions that you all have. Yeah.
Sorry, two really quick ones.
Yeah.
We don't have time. Oh, what? I know if you know the tribe. If you don't know the tribe name, how do you use it?
Well, you got to give me some context. What exactly are you talking about?
Like, I was just curious for you, like, when I say the natives at this land, or when I say the American Indians in Bozeman. I think everybody else are Native American or yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's really an individual thing upon that person who maybe has that identity. And if anybody in this room would like to speak to that, I am more than welcome. But I just would like to say that I think, referring to that particular person and maybe asking what they prefer is going to be among the best way. Would you like to offer something?
Yeah, preferably indigenous or, or native peoples. That's kind of the best, most inclusive way. Just because that more so acknowledges that it's not a, for lack of a better wording, colonizer term. Because Indian was a term given to indigenous people rather than Native American or indigenous. Although there's still being more identities worked with that. Or more terminology to naming our peoples in a more generalized way.
And I would say probably most widespread, I hear Native peoples or indigenous, and that's kind of what I like to stick to.
Okay, sweet.
Would you like to add anything? The First Nation, yes, and of course, that was in my land acknowledgement, yes, I've heard First Nations people as well too. So First Nations people, indigenous people,
Native people.
native people, I would say that those are kind of your three you want to stick with. Thank you for.
And then I have a question. Yeah, so for like, I know it's important more to get the question. I feel like sometimes that question, I just come across really blunt, like, I don't mean to be. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, I think, one, you need to educate yourself a bit. So prior to looking to a person of color or looking to a person of a different gender identity or sexual orientation than you, do some research on your own before you're asking that person to educate you. So that's number one. Number two, I think that in a place, from my own experience of being curious about different people or other people than myself, sometimes questions come out, they sound blunt or a little mumble jumble. And I think in those type of opportunities, that's a place to accept being called out. So I mean, this is something that I've experienced a lot of my life of hearing those types of questions, and I call people out right away. So in that case, rather than, oh, no, I didn't mean it that way, or, oh, but you misunderstood me. Shut your mouth and just listen to what the person has to say. So number one, educate yourselves first, and then secondly, be quiet and listen. Yeah.
Going back to phrases for Native people that are a little. Like hurtful or like disrespectful, that's where disrespectful are not like how we moved on from kind of like homo search.
Is there anything that's disrespectful? Because I. Which yes, you ask. I would say if either one of you are comfortable to answer that question, go ahead. I'm gonna say, I can't necessarily speak on that behalf, that's not an identity that I hold. But also, I don't necessarily want to be sharing negative words around in terms of what we should and should not be calling people. But if there's anything that sticks out for either one of you, please share.
Personally, I grew up off the reservation, and a term that is like just really useful is that grew up the way I did was being called an apple. So like I have red skin, but I'm white. Second thing, it's just I grew up a little more traditional than a lot of people on the reservation. So when people say something like that to me, especially Spanish, I'm a traditional auntie. Children. It's basically like, sorry, I can't even PJ, it's like PJ said, if you say something, I will correct you, just don't try and track. Said and just be willing to take in the knowledge of it. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I would like to bounce off that too, just like, kind of what we said in here. These are kind of the ways that would be ideal, but that changes each person. So adapting your language to help people like, okay, I'm not cool with that, but please refer me to this. Like, for if, like, you were talking to me or Tio, we would say like, okay, like, I'm of this tribe. Maybe refer me like a hood or Sioux or Crow. Like referring to us as we ask, so that's a big thing about understanding, at least even identity in general, is just, do your best to understand, but also if you're wrong, that's fine. As he said as well.
All right, folks, I'm out of time. Thank you both so much for offering your insight. And thank you all for your attention and listening. I will connect with you two afterwards with some more information. But please, oh, my email's not up there anymore. I'm the only PJ Diamond here. So you can easily find me, walk over to my office, pop in. But thank you all for your time and questions, and best of luck. Thank you.
At this time, we'll turn it over to Carrie. Lindsay is going to be passing around some handouts. This is going to be for your Title IX training and things to complete at the end and something that we need back from you. Lindsay also passed around a clipboard. If you have not had the chance to sign that, please do so because we have to track who has completed the Title IX training and who hasn't. And then I will turn it over to Cammie at this time. She can kind of introduce herself and tell you a little bit more, but this is our official Title IX training, so you guys kind of get all the ins and outs of being a mandatory reporter of the orientation.
There's not a clicker, but it gives you the great.
All right, you guys, thanks for having me today. My name is Cammie Bechtold, and I am the interim Title IX surveyor here at Montana State, and I have been in this role for 4 days. Woo! So, we're going to go through this training. I've taken this training a lot. I've given this training a lot, so you guys are in today. Congratulations to you all. But yeah, this is an important subject here at State that we're going to talk about today. And the first thing that I would like to say is that this training may have some triggers for some of you if you've ever been a victim of sexual assault or of any sort of harassment. And if you feel like during this training you need to get up and leave, please do. Or if you'd like to talk afterwards, or if you'd like to reach out and find some resources available, the Voice Center is a great confidential resource center that you guys have probably heard about. Yes, here's the Voice Center. Great. So much like their presentation, please feel free that if something does trigger for you to step out or take time to compose yourself. All right, so these are the things that we're going to cover today. At the end of the day, really, the one thing that I want you to understand about this training is that you are a mandatory reporter. And there are certain things that if they come to your attention, you're required to report them to the Office of Institutional Equity. If you're unsure, you can still report to the Office of Institutional Equity. So report, I'd rather have people over-report than under-report. So when you receive information about sexual harassment, discrimination, retaliation, any of those 3 items, you should report to the Office of Institutional Equity. If it holds with you and it ends with you, that means that we're not doing a favor to the person who reported, we're not taking care of them as an institution should, and as we are required by law too. So please make sure that don't take anything else away from this entire presentation, take that away. Again, you are a mandatory reporter as an orientation leader. And let me take a moment just to thank you guys for the work that you do on this campus, because your role is so vitally important to our new students getting off to the right foot. So thank you guys for what you do. All right, so this is our role as an Office of Institutional Equity. We do house and take care of these policies around harassment, sexual harassment, and retaliation. These are the protected classes. When we talk about discrimination, these are the classes that fall under the discrimination policy that we hold in our office. So the things with asterisks are ones that are unique to the state of Montana. But if anybody feels like they're being treated improperly because of these classes, they can file a harassment complaint with our office. And obviously, Title IX is an educational amendment that happened in 1972. So oftentimes, in the past, Title IX was associated with college athletics, right? So that's kind of my other role on this campus, is I work in college athletics. And when I was growing up, Title IX was the thing that gave us all equal access to participate in sports or in extracurricular activities. But more recently, since the federal government has put out some clarifications, Title IX is also now about sexual harassment and discrimination as well. So Title IX, as it has been broadened, and as you guys probably know, like if you grew up in the system, Title IX kind of has these 2 roles, both within extracurricular activity and sexual harassment, but really it's about giving everyone an equal opportunity to participate in higher education. And whether that's extracurriculars, whether it's the classroom, whether it's residence hall life, whatever it is, the educational entity, Title IX, gives everyone equal right and access to participation in higher education. Does that make sense? All right, so discriminatory harassment. So I've talked about discriminatory harassment, sexual harassment, and retaliation. Again, those are the 3 prongs of what we do in our office. Discriminatory harassment has to be based on a person's identity from that slide that I previously showed. So that's the first trigger to trigger the discriminatory harassment policy at MSU. And then it has to propose or affect the person's ability to participate. Does that make sense? So when discrimination happens, if you identify discrimination or if someone's feeling discriminated against, they should come to our office and file a report, and we'll help provide them with services, but we'll also then talk them through how they might invoke that policy to make sure that they do not feel discriminated against in the future. And then sexual harassment at MSU. This is really kind of the Title IX prong, but this is when participation is impacted on a campus because based on one's sex, gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation. If it's based on that and the participation is denied, then it's sexual harassment. It falls under Title IX. And this is where this sort of discrimination has to be reported, and you're a mandatory reporter for this. Does that make sense? You guys all heard of this previously? Okay, great. That's a nice reminder for you. And how it works at MSU. I will say that MSU takes this very seriously. The office has 4 or 5 people in the office working on these topics and these policies so that we create an environment that is free from discrimination, free from sexual harassment, so that our students can learn and grow in a safe place. So that's our role. All right, retaliation. So retaliation is the third prong of what we do. So if anybody makes a report from discriminatory harassment or sexual harassment, retaliation is the third piece, and that our office protects anybody from being retaliated against when they report or when they feel like, when they report, and when they go back into their community, if they feel like they are continuing to now be retaliated because they made a report, we take retaliation very seriously as well. And that's another piece that our office protects against and provides accommodations for people who are retaliated against. We can take action under our policy against those people who retaliate against anybody who has reported. All right, consent. So I feel like this slide is weirdly placed in this presentation, but just want to take a moment to step back and remind everyone what consent is. I'm sure that you have maybe heard this before, but I want to make sure that you know that consent is very specifically defined in the state of Montana and at MSU. So the definition in the state of Montana is words or overt actions indicating a freely given agreement, right? At MSU, define it as informed, freely given, and mutual, okay? Indicating a willingness to participate in a mutually agreed upon sexual activity. Consent is not present if any of these four things happen. If the person is incapacitated, right? So most often we see people who are incapacitated after they've been drinking a lot, right? So that's kind of what we're thinking about there. If you're incapacitated because you're drunk, you cannot freely give consent. If you cannot freely give consent, then sexual assault, sexual harassment could be present. So you may have to then, if somebody brings that to your attention, hey, this happened to me, I was really drunk, not really sure how you feel about it, that's a trigger for mandatory reporting. Let's give that person some support and help, but let's also make sure that we take actions that person to make sure that our campus and community are safe. Okay? Other considerations, if there's just silence, that does not mean does not automatically indicate consent. Questions about that? Yes.
So, I like the state of Montana. That means something that starts with what goes. I'm not sure is silence a weird action. What I'm saying.
Right, but it is not, silence is not indicating a freely given, it's not a given agreement. Silence is neither agreeing nor disagreeing, right?
Yeah.
So we can say it's not agreeing.
Okay.
Silence is not agreeing, yes.
And then how does like intoxication also work with consent? Because I've done,
Yep, yep,
okay.
yep,
I know that like agreeing when you're intoxicated is like a no-go. However, people are like, but
right.
gray area. And you're like, but
Yeah, it's not a gray area anybody wants to go to. Like,
yeah.
I think, in my opinion, like, if you're incapacitated because you're intoxicated, when there is a complaint that is filed, that is going to be a piece of evidence. And that piece of evidence, more than likely, is going to tip the scales towards potentially a violation, right? So my advice about incapacitation and intoxication is there's a pretty firm line there about giving consent. You know, just if you're totally unsure or if there's not an overt action, an overt yes. And there's drinking involved, and there still might be an overt yes, but there's drinking involved, and you know that that person is probably legally drunk. But
Like it negates the yes.
yeah, that negates the yes. Negates the yes. Now, that's where, right, that's where we have a policy, that's where we have a federal law, that's where we have a state law, that's why we have investigations, that's why we have a grievance policy to sort all of that out. but from where you guys sit, when we talk about mandatory reporting, that is something you should report. If you're unsure, not sure, you don't need to investigate anything, but you need to report it. And I would say that this definition and consent is not present if the person is incapacitated, that most likely leads to the policy violation. Does that answer your question?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there is a gray area there, but I wouldn't play in the gray area.
No, right.
Like, that's my advice to you or to anybody that you're advising. Like, just don't, it's not worth it, right? It's not something that you want to have happen.
And Cammy, yes, anyone know the age of consent in Montana?
16. Okay. Good. All right, so our office also protects pregnant and parenting students. So pregnant and parenting students, our office is able to work with disability services and HR to coordinate their supportive and protective measures. So if we have a parenting or a pregnant student on our campus, they can come to our office for support to help them access our services as a university, to help them with things that they might need because of their parenting and pregnant status. Right? Just think about that as pregnant or parenting student, your needs are different. But you should still have free and equal access to our services. So our office can help with those sorts of services. All right. So our timeline policy, anybody who feels like they're affected under our policy, that they're feeling like they have been a victim of something that is related to their sex, gender identity, on the basis of sex, they have something that happens to them, they feel like it falls under the policy, anybody can walk in our doors and we will offer that person protective and supportive measures. So we provide a lot of that to anyone who feels like they've been impacted by our policy. Whether or not that person wants to continue with a formal complaint, or whether or not that person just wants to access those protective and supportive measures, they can come in and get those services. If the individual, the victim or the complainant, if they want to go further and adjudicate the issue, so they want to take it into kind of a more formal process, and they want to, some people don't want to go down that road, but you can go down that road. If you want to go down that road, then we have some very specific criteria that have to be met in order for us to take the case to a formal investigation. So if you walk through our doors and say, or you bring somebody with you and say, this person has been a victim, we'll help them with the supportive measures. It does not mean that we will do a formal investigation. So that often sometimes prevents people from coming in and getting services if they feel like they're going to walk in our door and their whole world and universe is just going to, kind of be really difficult because we're just going to start a formal investigation. That's not the case. We're going to provide support for that person, and then we're going to take advice from them as to whether or not they want to pursue the formal investigation. They have to be a victim of discrimination, harassment, retaliation, and it has to be on the basis of sex. When? They can come in at any time, but the only way that we will adjudicate it is if the complainant must be participating or attempting to participate in the university. So if somebody leaves the university and 5 years later they want to come back and have an investigation, we won't do that at that time. We will help them get supportive and protective measures, but we won't necessarily be able to pursue for our policy investigation. Where it has to be within the university, and it can be reported either directly or indirectly. So let's say you're an orientation leader, and during orientation, someone comes up to you and says, this happened to me, this thing based on either discrimination, harassment, or retaliation on the basis of sex, then you, as an editorial reporter, are responsible for reporting that but you also can report it to our office with or without that person present. Do you have a question?
I was just gonna ask if it like happened at someone else. But I see it says within.
Good, yeah, nice job. Did everybody hear that?
What is exactly the control? If the university, you mean to provide the student control over respondent?
Yeah, so if it's a student, no matter where it happens, that they can, we can adjudicate that for them. And university control means like not necessarily university owned. So university controlled might be the fraternity houses or the sorority houses. But so long as it is a student who's trying to access university programs, but is being impacted by this event that happened, doesn't necessarily mean that that event had to have happened on university campus. So long as it's a student that's being impacted, they can get services from it.
What if the injured student, like the victim?
That's a good question. I would say our office can still help with that. And I believe if we're helping that student who was a victim and is able to get, it's preventing that person from getting our services, that they would still fall under our policy. Yes.
So if somebody is like a victim to one of these things, like in high school, and they tell you about it, like they're now a student, like do they just get offered support but they couldn't like follow through with like a formal case?
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that a little bit and in terms of what the formal case looks like. We would certainly provide them with services and help them find resources and maybe talk to them about where a formal complaint might go, but that could be outside of our jurisdiction in terms of when it happened. But that student is now our student, and we certainly will provide them with as many resources as we can. Does that make sense? Because that does happen. All right. And these issues have to impact, like we've been talking about, their ability to access our programs. So this is kind of the back end of this presentation is the stuff that I really want you guys to remember. There's so much nuance in that first part. We could ask questions, we could talk about it forever. But what I want you to remember today is just the duty to report. In your role as an orientation leader, you have a duty to report. And this is what you have a duty to report, any of these things. Now, you're not always going to be able to pull this out of your back pocket and be like, let me see if this meets the criteria. But what I would say to you in your role is that if it sounds like this, and if you're not sure, report it. It's always better to report than to not report. The other thing is that you're going to help that student get resources, no matter what, okay? All right, and so these are some things to think about when you're maybe in the moment. Was their sexual and unwanted and unwelcome? Or maybe they were unsure. This goes back to the unsure piece. Report it. If there's something that includes the context of current or former romantic or sexual relationship, this is particularly true like with domestic violence, stalking, and those kind of things that are going to trigger this. Was there a previous relationship and is there something kind of off going on? And then based on someone's actual or perceived identity, is this some sort of issue that has to do with their identity or perceived identity? It doesn't even have to be what they themselves identify as, but if it's a perceived identity. And then even if, this is really important, even if the person says, I'm going to tell you something, but you can't tell anybody else. It puts you in a really bad spot, right? That's really hard. But what you have to say as an orientation leader and as a leader on this campus is, I'm sorry, I cannot promise you confidentiality, but what I will do is I will help you get through this with some support from the university. And there's a safe place that you can go and speak with, and they will take care of you and help you and support you. Right? And even if they minimize it, it wasn't that big of a deal. Well, you're going to measure it against these, and you're going to say, well, I'm going to have to report. Now, when you choose to report, that can look a few different ways. First, we'll talk about these reporting exemptions. These are places where where people can go and get support that are confidential. But that doesn't mean that they come to you and they tell you, hey, don't tell anybody that this happened to me, and then you take them to one of these places. You are not confidential. You still have to report that. Okay? But they could go to these places before they report to you and have confidential conversations about the incident or whatever that they're experiencing. So as a reporter, you want to listen, support, and report things that you do not want to be. Now, this is a trap that happens sometimes. You end up being their counselor. You end up trying to be an expert or trying to find out exactly what happened. That is not your role, okay? Your role is just to support them, to listen, to be empathetic, and then to report it. Okay, that's a hard place to be in, right? Kind of hard. It's kind of scary, but you guys can do it. Why reporting matters. So this, and we've kind of been talking about this, but it helps the university potentially identify patterns, and it helps the university, helps our students be more successful at Montana State. It allows us to help get that person the support that they need and to get them to the right resources that are going to work for them. All right, so when you do make a report, you can call, you can send an email, you can make a report online. You can bring that person with you. I've done that in my role in athletics. I've said, hey, we're going to have to go talk to Title IX about this. Can I walk over there with you? Can I take you over there? Can I support you and be that person who goes over there with you and introduce you to the people in the Title IX office? Because they're not super scary. They're humans. And you walk them over, and that works really well. Or you can ask us to come to you. I've also called the Title IX office, and I've been like, hey, I need you to come over here. Can you meet with the student right now? Sometimes they can, and sometimes they can't. But if they can't, they're going to tell you, give you some things to do as well. Yes?
I'm sorry, where is the town?
Sure, good question. It is in Montana Hall. It is on the 3rd floor. So if you go in the side and you go straight all the way up to the top, it's right there. All right, does that make sense? Making a report. So there is a report that you can make online as well. And when you do the online version, which is on our website, and we're going to go over that information in a minute. So when you do the online report, you want to include as much information as you know. You want to include all the names that you know, contact information if you know it. Even if you're not 100% sure about all of the details, just give them what you know and provide that information. Yes.
Like, we were a student and like a staff option.
Mhm.
Do you have a preferred one? Like,
For orientation leaders,
yeah.
you can do either one.
Okay.
I would probably recommend staff, but it doesn't matter. We'll figure it out and sort through that. And the main thing is that you're making the report. Okay. So when you report, the first thing that we're going to do is say, is there an immediate threat to campus? When there is an immediate threat to campus, that's when we go out and we do those timely warnings. Some of you may have gotten those on your phone before. Has anybody seen those before? Yeah, so like there might be a bear on campus, you get a timely warning, like stay away from this area, there's a bear on campus. But there's also times when there is a threat to campus and we need to make a timely warning, so that can happen through these sorts of reports. There's a group of people that get together and decide, is this a threat right now to our campus, or do we need to notify our campus? That's the first thing we do, and most of the time, that's not the case, but it might be. And then our staff will reach out to the person, and we will provide them with that support that they need and those resources. And then we will also, in that, usually that's by email, and most of the time, or all the time, that will also include, here's some options for you to think about. Here's some things that you can do with what has happened to you. We can kick off a formal investigation. Here's how you report to the police if you want to do that. And you can take your time and read it and decide which way you want to go. What doesn't happen is that we automatically start an investigation. So this is kind of the piece that, we want people to come in and access our resources. We don't always kick off an automatic investigation. So when people report, these are the 4 things that can happen. If the complainant or the victim doesn't sign a formal complaint, they don't want to take it to that level and they don't want to sign a formal complaint, which then would go into this resolution and adjudication piece. They can receive outreach and they can take no action. Or they can make an official documented report and give us all the information, and they can receive assistance. If they want to do a formal signed complaint, there's 2 options. A formal investigation is kicked off, or the 2 parties come to this resolution. Now, this is part of our grievance policy. This is part of how we resolve these things. And there's a very lengthy document that talks about all of these steps. You just don't have to be super up to speed on that. You just need to know that there's different options for the complaints that come through our office.
You said 2 parts. What 2 parties are you?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I probably should have said, but sometimes it's not always 2 parties. Sometimes it's more than 2 parties. But anybody, so you have the complainant or the person who was discriminated against or felt like they were the victim. And then you have the person who, or the parties, or however they're feeling discriminated against. You have this side, right? So most of the time, it's like, this is the complainant side, and then this is the respondent side is what we call it. So the person who is being asked to explain, hey, what's going on in this? How did this person come to feel about your actions or the actions that you took? Most of the time, how is it played out? Does that make sense? Okay, so these are reasonable and supportive measures. So when I say reasonable and supportive measures, these are the things that we can provide. We can provide safety measures, an escort across campus. We can change housing assignments, supportive measures. We can refer to community resources or academic assistance, move sections of classes. There's a lot of options that we can do so that that student can get back to a place where they feel like they have access and equal opportunity to participate here on Penn State and on everything that we have to offer. And this is available to all involved parties. So it's not just the complainant side that gets these resources, it's also the other side that can also access these resources and will have access to them. This is the formal investigation. I'm not going to go through this slide because this is, you can read this on our website. But if you want to learn more about what a formal investigation looks like, which most of you will never have the opportunity to be involved in, there's a very written and scripted actions that we take under formal investigations. In our formal investigations, we have a burden of proof, which is a preponderance of evidence, which means it is more than likely that it happened, 50% or more that it happened. And we start with the assumption that the respondent did not engage in the activity. So that's how we go about measuring whether or not the policy was violated. Oftentimes, law enforcement, we get questions about law enforcement and Title IX. Law enforcement is separate from us. It is an option for complainants, and it's really about whether or not. So when you have something that comes to your attention, the individual does not have to file a police report in order to get services from our office. They're very distinct and separate. So this just talks about what happens when to involve law enforcement and what that means for somebody that you might be working with. These are the resources at MSU. So confidential services on campus, confidential, in Bozeman, and then non-confidential campus resources. And again, this would include our office and the University Police Department. And also keep in mind that you cannot claim to be a confidential resource. Now, every employee at Montana State is a mandatory reporter. It's kind of how you guys as orientation leaders are mandatory reporters. Yes.
So that's like, doesn't include just our orientation students. That's like if anybody comes to us with any kind of sexual harassment, anything like that, we thank your manager.
Yes, as a student, yeah. So that's where you guys kind of end up in this unique place because you have this role as a leader and as an orientation leader. And then you have this role as a student. But everybody at Montana State should be a mandatory reporter. So if you learn of something like this, you should report to OIE so that we can help everyone have free access. Does that make sense? Yeah. And then this is our office. So that is my name in case you're filling out your survey. How to spell it. But we have great people up there. Like I said, we are on the 3rd floor of Montana Hall. This is our website. We have great resources on our website. And I know this topic is not super fun to talk about, but it's really important. And as your role as an orientation leader, this is really important for you to help those students who may not have a great experience, and you can help them figure out how to get resources and how to get help and how to have a better experience at Montana State. Yes? No. So that is what we just talked about. As a student, you should also report it and be required to report anything that you know about. But particularly as an organization leader, that's where we're doing this training. And any employee at Montana State too. So if you are a student worker somewhere, or if you're working somewhere on campus, you're also there for as a student, everyone at Montana State, you learn of a crime that triggers this policy, you should report to OIE. Now, the one thing I'll say about mandatory reporting, keep in mind is that you don't want this to land with you and to live with you. You need to pass it along. If you are unsure, you can ask our office. If you are unsure, you can ask Shannon. If you are unsure, you can talk to the RAs. They also have had this presentation. If you want to talk it through, you can call me. But it's really important not to let it land with you and to not pass it along. It's your duty and obligation to pass it along. Yes?
When you guys send the mail, is our name included in that?
No.
No.
Did you have a question? All right, I think that's my last slide. Yay. Guys, have any other questions that I can answer for you? Thank you for being my guinea pigs today.
Oh, you did
It was
great.
fun.
Candy.
I wish you the best of luck as orientation leaders. And again, thank you for your service to Montana State in this role. Because you get the opportunity to help those students start their career off on the right foot. And it's so important. And I don't think you guys get enough credit for the work that you do. So good luck, have fun. And if you need